Joe Sacco was put in an almost impossible situation by the Boston Bruins, and here's why he likely won't get rewarded for it.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Monday, April 21st. Thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins your first listen every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Everydayers will know that you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. I am a lifelong Boston Bruins fan. Been covering this team for various outlets for 20 years. Was a full-time hockey news writer for thescore.com and have been hosting this podcast since 2019. Today on the program, we are going to look at Joe Sacco's brief tenure as interim head coach for the Boston Bruins, whether or not he'll be back, some candidates to take over if they find a full-time replacement, and we'll also do a Providence corner, seeing as the Boston team, not in the playoffs, but Providence begins their playoff run coming up this week. And hopefully it's a long one. And it's something we can cover in the absence of Boston Bruins playoff hockey. The playoffs got underway over the weekend. Very weird not to getting ready for game one of a series involving the Bruins. But this is where we're at. And the longer than expected offseason begins. And one of the big questions for the Bruins is what will become of interim head coach Joe Sacco. Sacco, of course, took over for Jim Montgomery, who was fired by Don Sweeney on November 19th, very soon into the season. Montgomery, of course, is now coaching the St. Louis Blues in the playoffs, down 1-0 to the Winnipeg Jets in their opening round series. Sacco came in, and the Bruins went 7-2 in their first 9 games under him, allowing only 2 goals per game. The Bruins had been very defensively leaky up to that point, but they couldn't really build that momentum. It was up and down, and then more down than up. And Sweeney Neely decided, of course, to sell at the trade deadline. And that, of course, just completely blew up any chance of having a winning record as interim head coach of the Boston Bruins. Now, Sacco's been around for quite some time. Assistant coach, associate coach. He said he was just trying to make the most out of the opportunity that was given to him. And whether it was injuries, the deadline, focus of the organization moving more to the future, his job was to prepare the players, maximize the lineup. They had that very lengthy losing streak that sunk their season. They did finish kind of strong with a few wins there to unfortunately lower their their draft lottery odds. But Sacco came in, tried to keep things calm, even keel for the players among a bunch of turbulence within the organization. Didn't change things up too much, didn't try to reinvent the wheel, although maybe he should have gone with that Morgan Geekie, Elias Lindholm, David Pastrnak line a bit sooner. Speaking of Geekie, he said Joe Sacco is awesome. He was put in a tough situation where the team was at the time, and he did a great job of rallying the players together. And Geekie, of course, scored a career-high 33 goals under Joe Sacco and had been often scratched earlier this season by then head coach Jim Montgomery. David Pastrnak kind of echoed that love for Sacco. He said, super proud of Joe and the way he handled it and the way he coached the players till the end. He and Sacco kind of came to the organization around the same time, been together for a while. And Pastrnak said to see him come in a tough situation like that, he did a heck of a job coaching this group until the last game of the season. Like I said, Pastrnak added, I'm proud of him. It was a hard situation for him, and he did a heck of a job. Kind of impossible circumstances for him to try to turn this team around with all the injuries, with Jeremy Swayman struggling, and then, of course, with the trade deadline sell-off. He said last week he hasn't gotten any clarity from the Bruins on whether he'll return to the bench next season. That's something that will be addressed as the offseason moves forward. Sweeney, Neely, Charlie Jacobs will meet with the media on Wednesday, so perhaps we'll get some clarity there as to whether or not they're going to bring Sacco back. I think for the most part, he did, a pretty decent job for this team. Didn't really come in and, do anything revolutionary or explosive that really turned the team's fortunes around. He had, a decent go of things as the head coach for the Bruins and did as best as anybody could have, I guess. And he'll end up with a losing record, of course. And this comes in his first head coaching job since coaching the Colorado Avalanche in the pre-Jared Bednar era. He kind of had a tough run of things there as well with a rebuilding team very early on in the rise of Nathan McKinnon and pre-Cale Makar, of course. 25, 30, and 7, 57 points in 62 games for the Bruins this season, a .460 point percentage. For his career, he's at .487 between the partial year here in Boston and 4 years in Colorado. He's a good support on the bench. Not sure if he's really cut out for head coaching at this point, and there's probably some better candidates out there for Bruins management to look at, and we'll discuss some of those options here as the podcast continues. But full credit to him for stepping in, trying to make the most of this opportunity. Very tough circumstances for Joe Sacco. Likely will be bumped down the organization hierarchy chart, or perhaps allowed to seek opportunities elsewhere. And we'll look at some of those candidates here as the podcast continues. The Stanley Cup playoffs are indeed here, and while there's no games in Boston to be looking for tickets for, you might be looking to go out of market to catch some Stanley Cup playoff action. If you've never been to a live playoff game, it's like unlike anything else. The intensity, the speed, the energy in the building is next level, and thanks to Game Time, getting in the door is easier and more affordable than ever. It's the fastest way to grab playoff tickets. Even for those must-see matchups, prices actually drop as puck drop gets closer. And with last-minute deals, you can save up to 60%. I love the all-in pricing, so you know exactly what to expect at checkout, and the panoramic seat views, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive at the venue. Of course, there's Celtics playoff tickets that you can look into, Red Sox playoff tickets, whatever is in your area. There is an event near you, sports, comedy, theater, music as well. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, that's code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Game Time, last-minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your day. Everydayers will know that the best way to keep up on the podcast is to get it directly added to your podcast app feeds and your YouTube feed. So please do hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell as well so that you are notified directly when a new episode drops. So, do the Bruins bring Joe Sacco back? Unlikely, I would say. Do they hand it over to an established NHL head coach, or do they go with someone who's kind of a fresh voice? There are some veteran candidates, of course, to be considered. There is John Tortorella, who was fired by the Flyers. There's Peter Laviolette, who was recently let go by the New York Rangers. There's, of course, Joel Quenneville out there, who I do not want to touch at all. There's Mike Sullivan, perhaps, if he is to be let go by the Pittsburgh Penguins. A bunch of guys, Gerard Gallant, some guys who have been around the block and kind of the guys that are always in the mix for head coaching jobs because the NHL likes to recycle their head coaches. Now, who could step up? Fudo Shinzawa had a good article in The Athletic last week with some candidates. One guy who is going to be sought after by many teams is David Carle. He's the current University of Denver coach, and he's won NCAA championships 2022, 2024, coached the Team USA to back-to-back gold medals at the World Junior Championship. So an incredibly impressive record. He was an assistant to Jim Montgomery at Denver, which maybe could put the Bruins on the outside of his candidate list, seeing as the way that ended. And while there are, of course, it takes two to tango, and Montgomery didn't seem to want to stay in Boston, maybe Carle will pick his ear about what life is like under Sweeney and Neely, and maybe he'll say, yeah, I'm not really in a huge rush to leave Denver. Thanks, but no thanks. Internally, the Bruins could go with Jay Leach, assistant in charge of the defense, which wasn't super impressive this year, although, of course, there were the injuries to Charlie McAvoy and Hampus Lindholm to contend with. He was hired or rehired by Sweeney after he was let go by the Seattle Kraken. He had been an assistant there for the past 3 seasons. He was a candidate when Jim Montgomery was hired. He was interviewed for the job. He had been the head coach of the Providence Bruins for 4 seasons prior to that, oversaw the development of Jeremy Swayman, Jacob Lauko, and he's described as having an upbeat, engaging, and relatable personality. He'll be a candidate for sure, as will be Ryan Mougenel, who's in his 4th season as Providence's head coach. He took over from Jay Leach when he went to Seattle. Mougenel has coached a bunch of the young guys that are looking to make the jump to the NHL level, including, he coached Jacob Lauko, Johnny Beecher, Mason Lohrei, Riley Duran, Fabian Lysell, Georgie Merkulov, Fraser Minton for a time, Matt Poitras now as well. He's 49, fairly young still, full of energy and positivity, also knows when to be hard on players. He served as an assistant to Jay Leach for 2 seasons, highly knowledgeable about players at every level of the organization. Another NCAA coach that the Bruins would likely covet is Jay Pandolfo. He just concluded his 3rd season at BU, losing to Western Michigan in the NCAA title game. Been to 3 straight Frozen Fours. He coached Lane Hudson, Macklin Celebrini, 2 front runners for the Calder Trophy this year. Spent 5 seasons as an assistant before that under Claude Julien and then Bruce Cassidy. He's also worked with forwards in the penalty kill as a Bruins assistant, and he left after the 2021 season to be associate coach under Albie O'Connell at BU. Will he want to leave BU to go to the NHL? Who knows, but that's a guy who they're going to reach out to at the very least. Fluto mentions David Quinn as another option. He was on the Bruins' radar back in 2022 when he was hired by the San Jose Sharks. After 3 years with the New York Rangers, he did an interview for the Bruins position in 2022. He's the oldest of this group at 58, but he does know Charlie McAvoy from his time at BU, remains close to the defenseman apparently, and he was also Sacco's assistant for one season in Colorado. So maybe those two could team up as head coach, associate head coach, see how things go. He was an assistant with the Pittsburgh Penguins under Mike Sullivan this season, and was also an assistant at the Four Nations face-off where McAvoy and Jeremy Swayman played. Now, one of my picks is Marco Sturm, of course, a former Bruin who is currently the head coach of the Ontario Reign, the Los Angeles Kings AHL affiliate. He was in the running for the San Jose Sharks job that recently went to Ryan Warsofsky. He coached Quentin Byfield, Brant Clark, a couple guys who are developing into stars for the Kings. Served as an assistant to Todd McClellan with the Kings for 4 seasons. McClellan, of course, was instrumental in kind of turning around the Detroit Red Wings season this year. And Sturm, familiar with the organization, of course, after having been acquired from the Sharks in the Joe Thornton trade. And I think he'd be a great kind of off the radar candidate for the Bruins. A guy who's familiar with the organization, but coming in with some fresh eyes. And I think that might be what this organization needs right now. You look at Leach, Mougenel, even Sacco, Pandolfo to an extent. These are all guys who have been working with some of these younger guys for a long time, and perhaps they need someone from the outside to come in and give a more honest assessment or a fresh assessment of some of these players' strengths and weaknesses, and push some different buttons for these players. Mark Savard is also currently an assistant coach with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's another guy that I would love to see the Bruins try to pry away. One of their big weaknesses last year was the power play, and we all know how proficient he was on the power play, and maybe he can help spark something there as well. And he's familiar with Elias Lindholm, and Zadorov because of his time previously with Calgary. Anyways, those are some head coaching candidates. Of course, there is the Laviolettes, Tortorellas, Sullivans that they could look at if they want to bring in someone more established, which might be tempting because they need to turn things around quickly. And sometimes these guys come in, have a bit of a bump, then they eventually fade out instead of trying to get the most out of a young guy who's getting their first opportunity as a head coach. Which way will they go? We'll have to wait and see. And you're going to want to keep it locked to Locked On Boston Bruins for all the latest with respect to our favorite hockey team. Coming up, we're going to take a look at the AHL team, kind of who stood out for them this season and what to expect here through the playoff run down, looking for the Calder Cup. Hey, did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? You can turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire Stick TV 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to go. Dive into hundreds of premium titles like EA Sports College Football 25, Call of Duty Black Ops 6, Avowed, as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controllers are required. But with 4K streaming, you can also watch more than 105 million movies and TV episodes from Netflix, Prime, Disney Plus, Max, and more. That's Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On. It's available on Fire TV Stick 4 second gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max first and second gen, and Fire TV Cube third gen. And it's all available at amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On. I don't know about you, but I did check out some NHL playoff action over the weekend. It was kind of nice to watch it stress-free and to see everybody kind of just arguing about the referees without having to get into it with other fan bases. But still, we would love to see our Boston Bruins in the Stanley Cup playoffs. What we do have is the Providence Bruins, who will be taking on Springfield in the first round of the Calder Cup playoffs. I believe it's a best of 5 in the Calder Cup, and game 1 will be played on Wednesday at Amica Mutual Pavilion. The Providence Bruins had a pretty good season, and right now, if you haven't been paying attention, Dan Schluckmelish has been on fire for this team since joining them just a couple weeks ago. 6 games, 3 goals, 9 assists for 12 points, 2-point per game average for Schluckmelish over the course of the season. Of course, small sample size. This team was led in points per game by Vinny Lettieri. He ended the season up with Boston, but he had 21 goals, 29 assists for 50 points in 47 games. Matt Poitras was very productive. 17 goals, 24 assists for 41 points in 40 games to rank 3rd on the team in points per game. Georgie Merkulov led the team in total points for the 3rd straight season. 54 points in 59 games. 15 of those were goals. Providence, of course, was also boosted by some guys being sent back down. Fabian Lysell, Ian Mitchell, John Farinacci, Oliver Wahlstrom had 15 points in 19 games for this team after being sent down, being placed on waivers. 9 goals in 19 games after having 1 in 16 games for this team, or for the Boston Bruins before being sent back down. Now, the Bruins, like I said, will play the Springfield Thunderbirds. It's a best of 3, I should say, not best 3 out of 5. They'll play on Wednesday, Friday, and then potentially on Sunday if it requires a 3rd game. Providence went 41, 23, and 5 this season with 3 shutout losses, 90 points, 16 higher than Springfield, who was 34, 32, and 2. Springfield is led in scoring by some guys that I'm not super familiar with. Dalibor Dvorsky was a high pick for the St. Louis Blues. He's probably the biggest guy. Otto Stenberg, Sam Bitten, guys to keep an eye out. I'm going to be honest, I haven't kept up on the AHL that much this season. So this will be new for me as well to get into the Calder Cup playoffs and keeping an eye on the Providence Bruins. Obviously more from it'd be cool if they won. I don't have a huge emotional attachment to the Providence Bruins, but what I want to see is some of these guys who are in line to play for the big club next season have some good runs here. Fabian Lysell, Fraser Minton, who finished strong with the Boston Bruins to really show that they are big-time players and can succeed in higher pressure situations. Michael DiPietro as well, seeing as he was a first-team All-Star in the AHL this season. Eunice Korpisalo saying that he was unsatisfied with the number of starts he got this year. He's a candidate to be moved, and DiPietro could therefore be a candidate to be the backup for the Bruins next season. So we'll keep an eye on the Providence run. We'll keep an eye on some of the things that affect the Bruins in the playoffs. Of course, the Florida Panthers, we're looking at them in terms of if they can go far and if Brad Marchand can play half the games, because it will give them a better draft pick, and also some free agents who could possibly be looking at the Bruins as well, including Chris Kreider, who might be available from the New York Rangers. He just said that he was injured at the Four Nations, and that kept him from truly succeeding as well. Anyways, that's it for today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, my friends. I hope you all had a nice Easter weekend. I hope you're all taking care of yourselves, taking care of each other. It's going to be a different week here for me. So I can't guarantee that there'll be podcasts dropped in the morning, but there will be some daily. So just keep it locked to Locked On Boston Bruins, and we'll take it from there. Have a great Monday, friends, and we'll talk to you here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins. Do check out NHL Game Night next. Every game, every night until the Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Local analysis on a national scale, and you can find it on the Locked On NHL channel, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day.